Hi, I'm Maryellen Maguire-Eisen. I'm an oncology and dermatology nurse, and I developed the SunAWARE for Life program to teach children and the people who care for them about sun protection and skin cancer prevention. You might ask why I did that. The next slide shows you why. You can see that every year in the United States there are over 5.5 million cases of skin cancer. Skin cancer is the #1 cancer in the United States. Basal cell skin cancer accounts for over 4 million cases. Squamous cell skin cancer, another million cases. Melanoma, which is less common with 100,000 cases, is actually the most deadly. You can see in the center of that illustration that one person dies every 45 minutes from skin cancer. 90% of those deaths are due to melanoma. Remember, this is a disease that's preventable and easily recognizable. So this lesson is designed to have 4 objectives. The first thing I want you to know when we're finished today is the factors that affect UV intensity. I want you to understand your own personal skin sensitivity for developing skin cancer. We're going to explore some of the changes on our skin that are related to UV exposure, and we're going to talk about proper sun protection. Remember that anyone can get skin cancer anywhere on their body. Yes, it's true, people that look like me are more prone to developing skin cancer. But Bob Marley, for example, died of melanoma. He developed his melanoma on the nail bed of his great toe. People who are dark complected, it is not unusual for them to develop their melanomas on their palms, their soles, and their nail beds. Also, another picture, this is a teenager, Jillian Beach, who died of melanoma at 15 years of age. Melanoma is not common in children, about 400 cases a year, but it's important for us to remember, again, that anybody can get this disease anywhere on their body. So, we do know that skin cancer is predominantly caused by exposure to UV radiation. This illustration that I created for you shows you the 3 different types of UV radiation. The first one is UVA. A stands for aging, and you can see that these rays are very long. In the base of our skin, we have these little cells called melanocytes that produce pigment. Those cells are genetically programmed to create a certain amount in our skin, but they also have the ability that if they see too much UVA radiation, they can pump out more melanin, which floats to the top of our skin and makes our skin turn brown. That's a tan, and that's why they're called the tanning rays. So many people think that a tan is a great thing, but actually it's a sign that we've seen too much UVA radiation. Second type of UV radiation is UVB. B stands for burning. As you can see in the illustration, about 90% of the UVB rays are blocked by the ozone. These rays, when they hit our skin, the effects are more superficial. You can have redness, you can have swelling, you can even have blistering of your skin. The UVB rays are also responsible for metabolism of vitamin D in our skin. It only takes a very short exposure to UVB rays for vitamin D to be metabolized. Most dermatologists recommend, though, that you get your vitamin D from your diet or from supplementation. Third type of UV radiation is UVC. C stands for carcinogenic or cancer-causing. The good news, as you can see, the ozone completely blocks the UVC rays. All 3 subtypes of UV radiation can cause skin cancer. They can cause genetic damage to genes in our skin, especially tumor suppressor genes. But keep in mind, all 3 types of UV radiation can cause skin cancer. So let's talk about the factors that affect UV intensity, because UV intensity isn't the same all day. So we've already talked about ozone. Ozone plays a really important role in terms of the intensity of UV. Also, time of day. So temperature peaks at 3 p.m., but UV intensity peaks at 12 noon. This is when the sun is directly over your head. That's when the sun is the strongest. We also think about time of year. Most people think that the summer is when UV intensity is the strongest. Well, that's true, but it's really, really important to know that UV peaks on the first day of summer, June 21st. Because that's true, UV rays or UV intensity in May is actually stronger on average than it is in August. We tend to think when temperatures are highest, so is UV, but that's not true. We have to be very careful in the spring because spring sunburns are very common. The other thing, weather. The amount of cloud cover plays a role, as well as winds. Altitude, if you like to go skiing, either in the northeast or out west. The higher you are in terms of altitude, the more UV intensity. For every 1,000 feet above sea level, there's an increase of about 2% of UV intensity. Latitude. We all know that the area around the equator has the highest UV intensity. Also, Earth's surfaces. So if you are around a surface that is reflective, for example, water, snow, asphalt, and sand, all of those surfaces can reflect UV intensity. So you can get a double dose of UV intensity if you're on reflective surfaces. Also, land cover is really important. So if you're in a forest and there are a lot of trees, the trees can absorb the UV and can protect you from UV intensity. So there's some of the factors for you to think about when you're thinking about UV intensity. If you look at the next slide, you can see that sunburn frequency is very common in high school students, more common in teenage girls than it is in boys, but about 50 to 60% of high school students sunburn every year in the United States. This is incredibly important because we know that sunburns in childhood are associated with melanoma in adulthood, as well as other skin cancers. So this is an app just on my smartphone that you can download. It gives you the UV intensity for a moment in time according to where you're located. So it has a GPS that's built into it. It also tells you what precautions you need to take, and you can even have reminders in some of the apps to reapply your sunscreen. So this is a high-tech tool to learn about UV intensity and to protect yourself. There are also low-tech tools that you can use. The shadow rule, for example, as you can see in this illustration, UV peaks, as we said, midday. So when the sun is over your head, your shadow is shorter than you. Shadow rule is simply, when your shadow is shorter than you are, that you should make sure that you get out of the midday sun and seek shade. So it's really important in terms of skin sensitivity for you to know your own skin type. In dermatology, we classify people into 5 different skin types depending on the amount of melanin that they have in their skin, as well as the reaction that they have to UV rays. So you can see from this little table that we have created, type 1 skin. These are the kids with light skin, light eyes, oftentimes light hair, but they're the ones that always burn and never tan. Type 2 skin, a little bit more pigment in their skin. They're the children who have sometimes light eyes, can be a little bit darker eyes, and they're the ones that burn easily, but they tan minimally. Type 3, again, a little bit more melanin, as you can see in this table. These teens or students sometimes burn and slowly tan. Type 4, again, a little bit more melanin in their skin, are the students that burn minimally and always tan. Type 5 are students that are very dark complected, they rarely burn, and they become deeply pigmented when exposed to UV rays. I'm type 2 skin. What are you? The sun can really cause a lot of problems in the eyes. It can cause something called photokeratitis, which is a sunburn of the eye. But also, when you look at the illustration of the eye, you can see the center includes the pupil. The pupil is a muscle that opens and closes depending on the amount of light in an environment. That's how the UV rays get into our eyes. UV rays have been associated with the development of cataracts, and UV rays are also associated with the development of ocular melanoma. Yes, melanoma can develop in your eye. It's actually the second most common site for melanoma to develop, with over 2,000 cases annually of the disease in the eye. So it's really important, and we're going to talk more about protecting the inner and outer eye. Let's now talk about the risk factors for developing skin cancer. And you can see from this picture, this is a young woman who at 18 years of age developed skin cancer. And some of the inherent risks that she had for developing that disease was that she was light-skinned, she had light eyes. She also had an inherited a tendency to make freckles, as well as moles. You can't really tell in this picture, but she had hundreds of what we call common moles. They were small, but that showed that she had an increased risk. The more moles you have, the greater your risk for developing melanoma. She also had something called a congenital mole. That's a mole that's present at birth, and it was in that mole that she developed melanoma at 18 years of age. But she also had what we call acquired risk factors for developing skin cancer. She had histories of sunburns, even blistering sunburns. Indoor tanning is also a known risk factor for skin cancer. Glenna Cole, was a self-professed tanning addict. She worked with her foundation and developed a video with us called Glenna's Gift. In that video, she shared her challenges with a tanning addiction and her struggle with treatment for melanoma. I hope that you will Google Glenna's Gift and take a look at the video, because it truly was a gift from Glenna to us. We talked about freckles as being a risk factor for skin cancer, and it is. If you have a lot of freckles, that increases your risk of developing melanoma threefold. We tend to get freckles in places where we've had cumulative exposure or overexposure. I think we all know that we tend to get most of our freckles across the bridge of our nose and our proximal cheeks. That happens for a very simple reason. When the sun is the strongest, it is over our head. That's where it hits. It also hits the tip of our ears, our shoulders, and for some people, the scalp. But the presence of freckles is important. Here is a picture that you can see, again, of that student with type 1 skin, which is a UV photograph, and it shows that he has freckles all over his face. We teach students, wherever you have freckles, you need to give extra special attention to protecting that area, because we know that increases your risk for developing skin cancer. Only 1 out of 100 babies are born with a congenital mole. We start to develop moles when we're around 2 years of age. On average, Americans have 40 moles. Our moles should be somewhat similar. We call them garden variety. I'd like you also now to just take a look. This is a clip from the Glenna Cole video that I talked about, Glenna's Gift.
Knowing what to look for is how to either detect melanoma early or to help prevent it. So basically what you want to look for is, like I mentioned before, the ABCDEs. So when you have a mole, just a regular mole, A is for asymmetry. So if you cut the mole in half, it's going to look the same on both sides. That's what A stands for. B is for border. So you want to make sure your mole has a nice smooth border around it and not jagged. C is for color. Usually something that's normal, a normal looking mole is going to have the same color throughout. But if you have areas of light brown and dark brown, well, that's a red flag as well. D is for diameter. So we usually don't like to see our moles bigger than 6 millimeters, which is actually the edge of a pencil eraser. So if you notice anything like that, then that's something to look up for as well. And E is actually, in my opinion, the most important, which is evolution. So anything that you've noticed changing, the size could be changing, even if you've noticed a new mole or you think it's growing. These are all signs to look for, to have it and come and have it checked.
Okay.
Especially at the high school and college level, you know, they're not young, they're not babies anymore. And I think sort of delving deep and doing a comparison and contrast would really help them to understand what they actually want to look for.
We created this, I think, cute illustration of the ugly duckling sign. This is another term that we use in dermatology. I said to you, your moles should be garden variety. We also talk about looking for the ugly duckling. So if you've got a mole on your skin that does not look like your other moles, then that could be an ugly duckling. It's the ones that look different that are most concerning to us in dermatology. Again, take a look at your skin and see if you can find that you have any ugly ducklings. We also created a campaign called Watch Your Back. This is really important because 30% of melanomas in men are on their back. Men need to be especially careful with their back. They need to protect their back. They need to cover their back to prevent sun damage. They also need to check their back to see if they have anything that's new or different. So watching your back is really an important thing to do, especially when it comes to melanoma. But these are 4 characteristics that you can take a look at. It's called PEER. P stands for persistent. If you've got a growth on your face that is persistent, then you need to be concerned about it. If it's easily irritated, if you find that when you rub it, it becomes irritated or it bleeds, that's really important. If it's enlarging, okay, usually if it was a blemish, that would be improving over time. It wouldn't just keep enlarging. And also recurrent. Some skin cancers, some basal cells, as well as squamous cells, can appear as red patches on their skin, and they can wax and wane. But if something is recurrent, that's what you need to show to your dermatologist. This is a picture that I want you to take a look at. This is a young reporter from New York City who worked for ABC News. She had a mark on her right cheek that she really wasn't that concerned about. She thought that it was a clogged pore. It was present on her face for 1 year. She did a story in a dermatologist's office, and when she was there, the dermatologist took a look at it, and he told her, I think that it's skin cancer. 2 days later, she came back for a biopsy, and she was confirmed to have a basal cell skin cancer. That little skin cancer on her face required 28 stitches to close the incision. The next slide shows a collage of many different non-melanoma skin cancers. And I put this up and show it to you because I want you to remember that skin cancer can present in many different ways. Again, it could be a pink patch. It could be a bump on your skin that has a rolled border. It could have a central crater. It could be just a nodule. So it can be very variable. But if you remember the PEER acronym, if it's persistent, if it's easily irritated, if it's enlarging, or if it's recurrent, that's something you need to show to your healthcare provider. Again, there are also great apps you can download for your smartphone. You could take a picture of the lesion or spot that you're concerned with, and you can also set a time period for you to revisit looking at that lesion again. So I think it's really important to use all the great technology we have today to help us with prevention as well as early detection. What I'd like to do now is challenge you. You have learned about the ABCDEs of melanoma as well as PEER. I'm going to show you a few pictures of growths on skin that I have been privy to see, and I want to get your diagnosis, and I want you to take the opportunity to tell me if you would biopsy it or not. The first picture is a picture of a patient of mine. She had a mole on her lower leg, and she noticed that the mole was changing. It was becoming different. So she presented with this picture. Take a look at it. What do you see? What would you do? We'll come back and answer that in a moment. The next picture is a picture of a young woman that I met at a health fair. She said that she had a little red patch on her cheek. She believed that it was secondary to her eyeglasses that they were rubbing. She did show it to us, though, and because she was concerned and because it was persistent and easily irritated, guess what I told her? What would you tell her? What's your diagnosis? Here's another picture of someone who presented in the community and said, should I be concerned with this mole? Here's the mole. You see it. What do you think? Is it asymmetrical? Is the border irregular? Color consistent? Does it appear larger? We don't know if it's evolving because you don't have the history. The last one is actually my brother. He had a growth that popped up on his chin, and he noticed it, and then within 2 weeks he had what you see in this photograph today. What would you do with those 4 patients? If you answered for picture 1 that you thought it was a melanoma because it was asymmetrical, its border was irregular, color was variable, diameter was larger than an eraser head, and evolving, you would be right. And that required a biopsy, and that was what we call a superficial spreading melanoma. You can save someone's life if you can recognize melanoma on the skin. The second young woman was kind enough to get back to us and let us know that the dermatologist did biopsy her cheek, and it was a basal cell skin cancer. The third person who had the mole on her arm, that was symmetrical, the border was regular, the color was consistent, the diameter was smaller than an eraser head. Again, if something is new or different, that's of concern. And we told her because that mole had been stable for as long as she could recall, and there was nothing new about it, that it would be okay. But we always provide the caveat, that is today in this moment in time. But if it changes in the future in any of those ways, then you need to seek consultation with your healthcare provider. The last picture, my brother, we have a family history of skin cancer. My mother had a melanoma when she was a young person. That increases all of her children's risk of developing skin cancer. My brother had that biopsy, and he had a squamous cell skin cancer. So now let's talk about sun protection. So one of the things that's really important to know is how to properly use sunscreen. Sunscreen is the number one thing that we like to use, but lots of people don't understand how to read the labels. Sunscreen is an over-the-counter medication controlled by the Food and Drug Administration. If you look at the front label, the first thing that you need to look for is the SPF. SPF is really the sunburn protection factor. It's how well a sunscreen protects you against the burning rays. I recommend that you use at least a number 30 SPF. Second thing to look for is broad spectrum. That means it not only protects you against the burning rays, it also equally protects you against the aging rays or the tanning rays. Water-resistant claims is on the front of the sunscreen label, and it will either say that if you use this product in the water, it protects you for 40 minutes or 80 minutes. Also check for the expiration. Sunscreen has a 3-year shelf life unless you've got the expiration printed on the bottle or container. The back of sunscreen has a drug fact box. This was added a number of years ago by the Food and Drug Administration, and this is really important for you to take a look at. What the purpose of this is simply sunscreen. You need to follow the directions, and you need to, they say, apply liberally or generously. We teach people it's a handful to cover your whole body, and you need to reapply every 2 hours or more frequently if you're swimming or if you're perspiring. There are also other warnings saying don't put the sunscreen on broken skin. There are also recommendations that if you want to prevent skin cancer, don't use sunscreen alone. Make sure that you use it in conjunction with other things. Sunscreen comes in different vehicles. Sprays are very popular, but you have to be very careful. Put them in your hand before you put them on your face so that you don't inhale the sunscreen. Also, do not spray this sunscreen, which is alcohol-based, around open flames. Sunscreen sticks are really great because you can put them around your eyes, and if you are perspiring or playing sports, they don't run into your eyes. So sunscreen is wonderful if you use it properly. And as you can see, the sunscreen that she's applying on her skin looks like a black oil slick. And that's because there's two different types of sunscreen. One's called mineral, the other's called chemical. Chemical sunscreens actually absorb the UV rays, so they look black on the skin. This also shows you that sunscreen clearly creates a barrier between your skin and the sun. The third thing that it helps a student recognize is the fact that we often miss spots when we apply our sunscreen. The next thing is sun protection clothing. Hats are terrific. The number one type of hat that Americans like to use is a baseball cap. Problem with the baseball caps, it does not protect your ears, it doesn't protect your side of your face. I absolutely love to see that surfers and teens are now wearing these large straw hats. This is the kind of hat that's going to give you ample protection. I highly recommend that you wear them. We talked about protecting backs. There's nothing better than getting a swim shirt. A swim shirt will protect you all day long. You don't need to get out of the water or off your surfboard and reapply your sunscreen, at least to your back. And last but not least, sunglasses. I talked about the importance of protecting your inner and outer eye with sunglasses. So you need to check your labels and make sure that it says that it blocks UVA and UVB. But sunglasses are an important thing, and it's recommended that you wear them every single day of the year. What I'd like you to do now is take a look at this fun and informative wrap that we have created that will teach you about the 5 easy action steps in SunAWARE.
It's important to know and to educate about the power of the sun and its beautiful rays.
We got 2 words to help you prepare. Yo, everybody, let's get SunAWARE. A, avoid. Avoid it when you can. Cover up, seek shade, never indoor tan, whether you know it or not. The sun gets hot between 10 and 4.
So don't get caught. W,
Where?
pay attention to your clothes. Do they cover you up from your head to your toes? If not, switch it up. It can be so easy. Sunglasses and a hat will keep you cool and breezy. A,
Apply on the hour when you need it most. At least SPF 30, cause the sun's no joke.
Hold up. Make sure you reapply. If you do, you can kiss sunburns goodbye.
R, routinely examine your whole body. Notice something off, go ahead and tell somebody. Yeah, we got freckles, beauty marks, and moles. But if it looks strange, let your parents know.
E, educate yourself.
Yo, nothing's more important than your own good health. But don't be selfish, share the wealth. Teach your family and friends how to protect themselves.
Moral of the story, we're here to educate. Keep you safe, smiling each and every day.
So if you wanna make a difference, you gotta make a change. Rearrange what's important, there's no time like today.
Protect yourself and the ones you love. The sun can be tricky, but also lots and lots of fun.
Don't be scared, just be prepared. Tell them all around the world to be SunAWARE.
Tell them all around the world to be
SunAWARE.
I said, don't be scared, just be prepared.
Tell them all around the world to be SunAWARE.
In closing, now that you've learned about sun protection and skin cancer detection, I hope that you'll take these lessons to heart. As a nurse, I have seen people lose their lives through these diseases. That's why this is so important to me. I hope that you will share the lessons and the new information that you got today with your family and your friends. Be safe. Be SunAWARE.